Thank you. SABR is the Society for American Baseball Research, and we're an organization of about 6,000 members who all love baseball, are passionate about baseball, everything from its history to statistics, and we're really happy today to be putting on these panels with BAM. This panel, which is the Negro Leagues Legends, I'm going to turn it over to Larry Lester. Larry is the chair of the Negro Leagues Committee at SABR and has put this together, and I think it should be a really interesting panel, and he'll introduce our esteemed panelists. So thank you.
Nothing else I can do.
All right. Welcome to our Negro Leagues panel. We're going to have a lot of fun today. Now that everyone has a window seat, we're going to get started. To my immediate left, your right, is the last living umpire from the Negro Leagues. Last Wednesday, he received the Congressional Gold Medal for his efforts with the Montford Point Marines, one of the surviving 230 Marines from that segregated period. A man who umpired several games that featured Hilton Smith, Bullet Rogan, and of course Satchel Paige, which leads me into the honored guest that we have here, Satchel Paige's son, to my far left, your far right.
Thank you.
But before we get started, we need to celebrate because today is the 106th birthday of Satchel Paige. Born on the 7th day of the 7th month and the 7th child of John and Lula
like
Paige.
your dad.
So we're really blessed today to have two distinguished individuals here with us, and Robert Paige and Bob Motley, the umpire. As soon as we hear a few stories and anecdotes about these two great men, we will turn it over for Q&A because we want to make sure you get your questions answered and you're satisfied when you leave here. Now, Bob Motley, he umpired some games with Satchel Paige in them from the mound. What was it like? What was Satchel Paige's stuff really like?
Satchel Paige was one of the greatest pitchers I ever umpired. His ball never was low or outside from the plate. It was right on the heart of the plate. He could nip the side of that plate. Satchel Paige is one of the greatest pitchers I ever umpired. I probably umpired at least maybe 100 baseball games he pitched in. At one time, and let me tell you one thing, Satchel Paige, I don't even know Satchel Paige even knew my name. He always called me ump. He addressed me as ump. At one incident, he said, ump, I like to call in all my outfielder and bring him in. I say, Satch, the rule book state you must have 9 ball players on the field at all times. He nodded his head at me, he shook, he said, okay, ump. That's how he addressed me as ump. I say, you can bring them in, but they have to stand on the infield. He said, okay, ump. And he struck out the side. 1, 2, 3, right down the heart of the plate. Satchel Paige is one of the greatest pitchers I ever umpired in my whole entire life. And I've seen Don Newcomer. I saw Joe Black, Hilton Smith. Every one of them in that league I umpired. But he was the best I ever umpired because he kept the ball around the plate at all times.
All right, thank you, Bob.
Yeah.
Bob Motley, I'm going to call you Robert instead of Bob.
Okay.
We go way back, playing a little basketball back in the day, but you're going to be Robert today, so we won't get the audience confused with. This is Bob Motley, and this is Robert Paige, named after his baseball's greatest showman ever, Satchel Paige. Bob, you got any stories to share about your dad?
Well, growing up with you and my sisters and growing up in the area, in the neighborhood that we did, the times that you met him, that Dad was a practical joker. He always had something up his sleeve, no matter how he phrased it or how he posed the question. you could just about bet you could not think him. But he constantly was always trying to get something done for as little as possible, as little out of his pocket, because we got to the point where we had to charge him because he actually just had you going way beyond your capabilities to do things. At 11 years old, I had to go out and start the car, warm it up, turn it around, and we got a double driveway, position it perfectly on our side of the driveway. Else, I didn't get my dollar. So.
Okay.
Little things of that nature. But he was an outdoorsman. He was a sportsman. He had sayings that would constantly keep you laughing. Things like whenever you go in the woods and whenever you encounter a bear, that bear is never going to be in a good mood. Things of that nature. He would tell us if you want to make $1. So you say sure. So he'd say, well, I'm looking for a key for a lock that I haven't seen in 20 years. And he'd have 3 coffee cans of keys. You sit there and try them all. And, of course, if you found the key that fit the lock, of course, you got the $1. But instead of him paying you, he would give you a pencil and pad. And he'd say, I told you, I'm going to allow you to make $1. Just make it as pretty and make it as nice as you want to. But that's kind of the things he used to do. And then I had one situation where my mom went to the store, and of course she had to come to Dad to get some money. And so she was asking him, what did he want for dinner? And he said, well, I love your fried chicken and, your mashed potatoes and gravy. So she said, okay, I'll go to the store and get you some chicken, and basically. So she went to the store, and she came back, and she had me come out to the car, get the groceries out. So I came back upstairs, and I was telling Dad, I said, well, Mom's back. He says, okay. So then he told me, he said, well, listen, I want you to go down over there to the window. I want you to open up those shades and pull back the curtains. And so I said, okay. And he says, you're probably wondering why I want you to do that. I said, yeah. He says, well, I gave your mother $100 to go to the store to buy a chicken. And I just want to see what size truck it's going to take to bring that chicken in. So these are the things that I grew up with. I mean, I could go to sleep and I'd wake up, and on the couch is Cool Papa Bell. And I just remember them by their names. They had real cool names like Cool Papa Bell, Double Duty Radcliffe. And these were people that would come in the middle of the night. Our house was like a midway.
Goose Tatum.
It'd be Goose Tatum. I'd wake up and I would say, who is that man with those incredibly large hands? His hands were so large they scare you. And it would be Goose Tatum, Judy Johnson. All these kind of guys would come through, and I'd wake up. I was the runner. I had to go whatever they drank or whatever type of coffee or type of soft drink. That was my cue. I'm off to the store. But the house was kind of like a menagerie. It was always someone there. And later in life, of course, I was able to distinguish who these people were.
All right. Thank you, Robert. Let's hear a little bit more from Bob Motley, our umpire. You had a run-in with Buck O'Neil one time. Tell us about that. What happened?
It was a close play at home plate, and the Monarchs were playing the Homestead Gray, and the Monarchs lost. I yanked the winning run out at home plate, and Buck O'Neil, he came out to argue the situation, and Buck O'Neil, he said the magic word, so I had to put him out of the ball game. But that night, I didn't have no place to stay. He always called me Kid. He said, Kid, you can share the room with me. So I say, okay. He said, just go to the hotel and tell them to give you the key. So I went to the hotel, and I went early so I can get in the bed before he got there. So I got in the bed. I made sure I left him a room so he can get in the bed. So I laid there until I didn't go to sleep, waited till Buck O'Neil came in. He thought I was asleep, but I was just laying there waiting for him to get in. He got in the bed. Never did say a word. Now, I didn't say, I act like I was asleep. So early that morning, I got out of the bed before he could wake up. But he never said anything to me about put him out of the ball game that night. Buck O'Neill's one of the fine gentlemen I ever met in traveling in that league. Buck O'Neill saved my life one night.
How so?
It was another close play at home plate, and I yanked the run out coming home. They lost. A guy by the name of Hank Bathers, he played third base for the Kansas City Monarchs. He didn't like the call, and he waited until the bus went down. Back in those days, we didn't have freeway like we have now. There was a dark highway, and they didn't call me all kind of names because I took I rode with the team. That's the only way to travel in that league. I had to ride with the team. I always took the back seat on the bus so I can watch the ball player. But I always carried my mask for protector in case something happened. So a guy by the name of Hank Bailey, he played third base for the Kansas City Monarchs. They already called me every kind of name you can think about. But they waited until the bus got down the dark highway. Hank Bader, he stood up and said, I'm going to cut your so-and-so head off with a name in between there. So he came, I was in the back seat, so he was in the front seat, so he stood up and came towards me. He put out a big old knife, looked like a big old butcher knife, and he swung at me, but he missed. I hit my face mask in my hand. I swung at him. I missed. Buck O'Neill, he stood up and ran back. He pulled that Hank Bader down. He set him down in the seat. Say, if you touch that umpire, he called him all kind of names. Buck O'Neill said, you want to go to jail? If you touch that umpire, I'm going to put you off the bus right here, and you will never play another baseball game in your life. Buck O'Neill saved my life on that one incident. Those guys were. They was fun to travel with because I traveled all over the United States on the bus. That's the only way the umpire could travel back in those days, to get on the team bus.
But you were still blind, though.
Oh, yeah. I'm always blind. Well, I could take it. I got thick skin. It don't make any difference. I've been called everything. You can name anything bad in this world, I've been called that.
Well, thank you, Bob. Yeah. Robert, tell us what was like living with the greatest baseball pitcher ever. Satchel Paige played in every country you can think of: Venezuela, Puerto Rico, Cuba, of course, the United States, Canada. He was on the road a lot. What was it like being the oldest son of black baseball's greatest pitcher?
Well, to be honest with you, at that time, it was actually beneficial for me being the youngest, because we were raised by our aunties primarily, and they took duty, and they had schedules. Like when Dad would be, like you just said, God knows where he would be, but he would get in an argument with somebody in the clubhouse or hotel about the name of a hotel, the name of a lake, the name of a river that they fished on, the name of a type of fish or whatever. Right. So he would call my mother up 3 o'clock in the morning. Of course, I had to go get the phone, because at that time we had the one centralized big phone with the enormous long card. So that was my cue that when the phone rang at 3 o'clock in the morning, I knew who it was. Everybody knew who it was. But my sisters and they all played sleep like that's Junior's job. So I had to go get the phone, take it into Mom. But it was quite an experience, because believe it or not, I was, I guess, around 8 years old in grade school. Before, everybody would ask me, well, what does your dad do? I said, he travels.
Yeah. He
just travels. He's here and he comes and he's gone. But it was quite a unique experience, because we got a chance to be raised by our aunties, and we got a chance to be exposed to a lot of diverse parenting skills.
Right.
And believe me, that was a whole experience in itself. But of course, when they would come home and when Mom would go off, sometimes she would fly off the next morning, because he would want her wherever he was, because he wanted her for duties, cooking and carrying on and taking care of his personal needs. But when they came back, they always had gifts and trinkets, and they always had unique items that would make up for the time they were away. But it was quite an experience, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
Well, Robert, let's set the record straight here today. He's often portrayed by historians as a Stephen Fetchit type ball player. He walked to the mound like a pallbearer at a funeral, you know, shuffling slowly, and he came across as illiterate. But you know, and I know that your dad was into antiques, avid fisherman, a gun collector, and a philosopher at times. Could you talk about that?
Absolutely. I can remember once I was gained of the knowledge of what he did, and it was phenomenal. I can remember asking him one time, right after he was selected by Cleveland, and he pitched actually in his first game. And I just thought about it. I just said, man, it was just a tremendous amount of pressure on you. I mean, you carried the whole weight. It was kind of like Joe Louis and smelling fights. You carried the whole weight of the world on that stride to the mound. I said, how in the world could you just fathom that and be able to compete, and plus at the age 42 years old? And he looked at me and he said one thing. He said, I could pitch. And I knew I could pitch.
All right.
Let me tell him something. If you all never seen Satchel Paige, I know you all never have seen Satchel Paige, but look at this gentleman right here. If you want to see Satchel Paige, he looked just like his daddy. See, I knew his daddy for almost 12, 14 years. He looked just like his daddy.
Maybe we can do a hologram and sell it.
Yeah.
But kind of like piggybacking on your point of he was an ingenious individual. I mean, with the manner and level of schooling that he had, I sit many a day and was just kind of like awestruck at things that he would do, how he would repair lawnmowers and outboard motors, just out of his own ability of how this machine worked. It wasn't anything in the house that he couldn't fix, from my mother's jewelry on down to the antique plates that would sometimes get broken. But he was creative as any individual I've ever met in my life.
All right, thank you. Bob, you got anything to add about the great pitcher, Satchel Paige? Anything you want to say before I open it up for Q&A?
Yeah, I like to tell you, did I tell you about the story? He want me called in all the outfielder. He going to strike out the side.
Right.
I doubt if even Satchel Paige even knew my real name. He always addressed me as Ump. He said, Ump, I want to strike out the side. He said, I want all my outfielders to come in. I say, Satch, the rule book say you must have 9 ball players on the field at all times. He looked at me and said, okay, Ump. That's how he addressed me, okay, Ump. So they came in, the 3 outfielders, they came in, and they stood on the side, not off the field, and he struck out the side one by one. And I didn't give him nothing. The ball came down the plate and looked like when it got to the plate, it took off right over the plate. Or if it came to the plate, it hit the plate just like that. That's the way Satchel Paige ball, when it got to just before it get to the plate, looked like it took more speed. Instead of slowing down, it took off like that. And that's when I used to yank him out.
Looked like an aspirin tablet.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right,
I used to love the umpire.
We're going to open it up for a little Q&A so you can ask questions and find out more about these two living legends. We got a Congressional Gold Medal winner here, and Bob Motley. We got the son of the greatest pitcher to ever play between the white foul lines.
I have a question for Robert Paige. What did you think of the HBO movie and Delroy Lindo's portrayal of your father? Did you get a chance to see that?
Yeah, I did.
And do you think it was accurate, especially the frustrations of him not getting called up right away into the majors?
The research they did on that was phenomenal, all the way down to the cognac and the orange juice. I mean, and that was something that was very rare that he would drink, because he was an old charter kind of guy. But at home, and it was just something about being home. He would be way more relaxed, and that's when I first was when I first noticed him drinking cognac and orange juice. And they had researched, their research department had really delved in order to find out that information, because they called my sister and they called me on the phone. We did some telephone type of interviews, but neither one of us mentioned that.
That's great. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That was the Soul of the Game movie by HBO. Don't be shy.
In today's modern era, past or present, who would you compare Satchel's pitching today?
I can answer that question. I haven't seen a pitcher yet I can compare to Satchel Paige. It's not one yet living that I can compare to Satchel Paige. That's how great he was.
All right.
For Robert, the age that your father pitched was phenomenal, especially today, in today's standards. What was he like to prepare for pitching in his later years, and what was it like after? I mean, the sore days.
Well, actually, I'm the fifth out of 8 children, and of course, by the time I was born, you know, it was relatively late in his career, but he did have some occasions where he did perform, and of course, his last Major League exhibition was good with the Kansas City Athletics and the Boston Red Sox, and I actually caught him before he pitched in that game. I had the distinguished honor to catch him because we had all the equipment, everything you know the baseball players had or needed. Well, we had it all downstairs, but I never will forget it because my mother was upstairs and she was looking out the window. And I remember before, you know, of course, he threw a couple, you know, and he used to just walk it off. I mean, it was just so ingrained in him, the distance from the mound. We were out in the backyard. He would just walk it off, and he would say, okay, you squat there. And, of course, I had on all the regalia of the catcher's equipment. I had everything on, you know, because I knew he could throw from just playing around the backyard with 3/4 hops, and when he'd throw the ball and throw it to us. So, cousin and I. But anyway, it was phenomenal. And he says, you'll know when you catch the ball wrong. And I did, because, I mean, my hand would just burn. So that was the power that he had at the age in which he still had this fantastic control. I was amazed myself. But that's the experience that I had that will forever stay with me.
All right. Before you ask your question, this is Emmanuel Mason. He's related to Reverend Hank Mason, who played for the Monarchs and later pitched for the Philadelphia Phillies. So you two gentlemen know Hank Mason, or what we better know him behind the scene as Pistol.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Mason.
What I need to ask was there 2 Negro women that played in the league. One I thought played second baseman for some team. I'm not for sure which team it was, but wasn't there 2 Negro women that played in the Negro League? Bob,
I didn't get her question. What she say?
The question was about the women that played in the Negro League.
That was three ladies played in the Negro League. Yeah.
okay. What teams did they play for?
One of them played for the Kansas City Monarchs, and one of them played for the Indianapolis Clown.
All right, was one of them second baseman?
Who?
Right, Connie Morgan was second base.
Didn't one of them play second base?
Yes.
Okay. Also, one other question. The Clowns, didn't they have a first baseman with an extra long glove? You know?
They had a guy by the name of Goose Tatum play first base.
Right, but he had a real extra long first base glove.
He had a glove about that long.
Yes.
And if you
I've seen him in person.
If you didn't watch the ball, say the ball would hit to the second baseman or shortstop, third base. If you didn't watch Goose Tatum, he will put out another ball from that long glove.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Goose Tatum was one of the greatest first basemen I ever seen too.
Thank you, Mr. Mason. This is your opportunity to talk with living legends.
Gentlemen, with Major League Baseball being in town for the All-Star game, unless in the last 48 hours the Major League Commissioner has gone to the Negro Leagues Museum in 18th and Vine, do you have any reason why he has not been there, or what the problem or issue is of why he's not gone to the Negro Leagues Museum?
We cannot hear your question, sir.
Yeah, what question?
Okay,
What?
I'm sorry. Do you have any reason or knowledge of why the Commissioner of Baseball has not gone to the Negro Leagues Museum when he's ever been in town? What the problem or issue is?
I understand that he's going to visit this time while he's here.
Yes, he's supposed to. He's scheduled. Has a scheduled visit on Monday.
Yeah.
Yes. Any more questions? And while we take the next question, Bud Selig has been instrumental in granting retroactive pensions for former Negro League players.
Could you talk about your dad's his stay in the major leagues, the time he spent there, his experiences there? You know, I know it was at the tail end of his career. Can you mention that?
From what the fishing trips, I always refer back to our fishing trips because that's when kind of he would open up and we would talk about interpersonal things. But in his latter years in the league, of course, there was a lot of dissension, and of course, there was a lot of stress. But the fact that he was able to, to actually pitch in the major leagues was quite like his crowning jewel. So, he overlooked all the obstacles and all of the barriers and all of the confrontations and everything. But he did talk about it, and I know it had to take its toll. It had to wane on him a little. But the most regrettable, I guess, aspect was that he really wished he had had a chance to pitch when he was in his prime, because it really would have, even when he talked about it, he really would have given him something to really see.
Who's got questions? Anyone? Question? Back here. Talk real closely in the mic, okay?
How you doing, Mr. Paige?
Doing just fine, thank you.
I met you yesterday. My uncle was Ted Double Duty Radcliffe, and he caught you.
Exactly.
Caught your father.
What an honor it is.
And I just want to say it's a pleasure to see you guys up there. I know my uncle would be very proud to see you guys up there talking about Negro League Baseball.
I'm sure he would.
And I'm Ernest Radcliffe.
Oh, and he was a phenomenal dominoes player, too.
I know you have many stories about it.
Yeah, today's Double Duty's 110th birthday. Right?
Any questions, guys?
They called him Double Duty because he could pitch the first game of a doubleheader and catch the second game. And let it be known that Satchel Paige once pitched both games of a doubleheader.
Excuse me, sir. There you go.
Hilton Smith pitched a doubleheader.
That's right.
It's a question for Bob Motley. Did you umpire straight, or did you umpire? Were you a showman like Emmett Ashford was?
I was a showman. I used to do it for the fans' sake. I did it for the fan, so the fan would know if it's safe or out.
If you visit the Negro Leagues exhibit, in the middle of the room, you'll see a picture of Bob Motley doing the splits as he called someone out at first. And sometimes he would jump in the air and single out or safe.
I might jump over your head if it's necessary to call somebody out safe.
He was quite the showman.
It got into my system, at my field, and I felt good when I called play.
If you want to see a little bit about some of his energy, let's talk about instant replay, Bob. Let's have instant replay for balls and strikes. What do you think about that?
I don't think you should have that. I'm against that. I'm against I am a full-blooded umpire. So we start instant replay, you take away our showman.
All right.
This is for the guy in the middle.
Mr. Motley.
Yeah. Did you ever have to throw Satchel out of a game?
No, I never did have the opportunity to, because Satchel was a gentleman. He, like I say, he always addressed me as ump. Like I said, Satchel Paige probably didn't know my name, but he addressed me as ump. And when he addressed me, he said, he always was polite. Ump, can I do so-and-so? Ump, can I do so-and-so? And that's why he addressed me. No, but I threw a lot of guys out of the ball game. I'll tell you one incident I threw out of the ball game. The catcher didn't, and the pitcher didn't like the way I was calling. You know how the catcher get down, and he called for a fastball. He let, instead of he's catching the ball, he let the ball go there and tear my face up. I threw him out of the ball game. Then I wind up clearing the bench. Everybody was in the bench. I went and threw all of them, 10 guys out. And they want to know why was I putting them out of the ball game. I only gave them so many seconds to leave the ballpark, and I put the clock on them. 1,001, 1,002, 1,003, 1,004. See, by being an umpire, you got to be in control. And you got to run the ball game. You can't let the players run you. You got, if you have to clear the whole entire, I'd set the whole team out of the dugout, and I asked the skipper, as you need him, you go in the dressing room and bring him back out. I control my ball game. Any more questions?
Bob, could you tell us a little bit about Josh Gibson and the times that you've seen him play, and tell us a little bit about Josh.
I'm 90 years old. That's before my time. I didn't see him play.
Yeah, Josh played most of his games along the Eastern Seaboard, and he was in a different league, the Negro National League, where Bob Motley umpired in the Negro American League. You didn't have very much interleague play back in those days.
Any more questions?
Oh, we got plenty of questions.
Yeah. Shoot them.
How fast was Cool Papa Bell?
What they say, he could what they say, he could
he could jump in bed.
He could jump in the bed and before the lights go out. That's how fast he was.
And believe it or not, that's a true story. In the interview with Cool Papa Bell, I asked him about that story. How could you make up something so unbelievable as you hit the light switch and you jump in bed, pull the covers over you before the room got dark? Well, back in the day, they had these push-button light switches. And those of you may be old enough to remember when you push that button in, sometimes the top button would not come out. It would stick. It was a shortage. And so when his dad came back to the room, that's when they were with the Pittsburgh Crawfords, he bet Satchel Paige that he could be under the covers, hit the switch and be under the covers before the room got dark. And he won the $5 bet. I said, this is too incredible to be made up, so what's the truth? And he told me about the defective light switch, which is still in your original father's house.
Right.
You can still see these push-button light switches. So it is a true story. And the $5 to the good.
Larry, I don't know if you heard the real reason Dad was. He told me, he said, first time he saw Cool Papa play, he knew he had to have him because he said he's never seen a man that hit a line drive to second and get hit in the head with the ball.
As he slid in.
So that was just some of the folklore that he would say about how fast Cool Papa was.
Yeah, Cool Papa was just so fast that some infielders would say if the ball bounced twice, you might as well just put it in your pocket. You couldn't throw him out at first base.
I can tell you a little bit about those guys. I watched them guys play. They play for the love of the game. After the season was over with, most of those guys had to go out and get them a job to make it to the next baseball season start. They didn't play for the money of the game. They played for the love of the game. When they hit hit the ball, they was on the run. They run like a jackrabbit.
That's actually my next question, what you just said. You had the guys back then that played for the love of the game, obviously, and the guys now that play for the love of the contract. What words of wisdom do you three have to the men that play now that's all they care about are the numbers on their paycheck rather than their numbers on their stats?
What the question is? What
would be your words of wisdom to the men that play baseball now?
Well, they play for the money of the game. They play for the love. You can't go and sign no ball player now unless you give them some money. Back in those days, they played for the love of the game. They didn't want the money. They would want to play baseball. Every ball player back in those days in the Negro League, after the season over, they had to get them a job. Most of them had family. They had to work. Every one of them needs to work.
Yeah, you have to remember that they played 6 months out of the year, and during the winter months, they would go to Venezuela, someplace in South America, the Caribbean islands, and play on a winter league team. What's amazing about that is that the leagues in South America were all integrated, and then they would come back stateside and then go back into separate leagues. So it's quite the phenomena back in the 30s and 40s. And this is how they picked up an extra paycheck if you were good enough to play in the South. Otherwise, you'd have to pick up a job stateside at a meatpacking place or the post office.
Sheffield Steel.
Yeah, Sheffield Steel, a construction job to make ends meet. So the wages for a Major League Baseball player and a Negro League ball player were very good. They were similar to what a school teacher or a postal worker was making at the time. They didn't make the mega salaries that they make today. So they actually played because they wanted to be there.
I think too, Larry, in the times of the eras, at that particular junction in history, that was the only game in town. That was that sport. It was the attraction. As today, of course, you have other market areas like basketball, football, and hockey, and track, and those other areas. But Major League Baseball and, of course, the Negro Leagues were the only competition or the only actual entities of that era. So it made a difference between why guys played then, because they truly had the love of the game, versus now when you have throwing marketing and contracts and multi-millionaires overnight. It's a totally different ethics that they use now.
Yeah, so let's remember the competition at that time was very tough because the best athletes in the country played baseball, not basketball or football.
Absolutely.
Yeah, remember they didn't have no pro football league. They didn't have no pro basketball league. All they had was pro baseball back in those days.
Yeah.
Hey, Pete from New York. Mr. Motley, did you ever have a chance to see Josh Gibson? Was he the best hitter that you ever saw?
That was before my time.
Okay.
Remember, I'm 90 years old. That was before. Now it would be 110. So I'm not that. I'm old, but not that old.
You were talking about the players working. I grew to know about the Negro League through my dad, who was at the Ford Motor Company, and Connie Johnson and several of the Monarchs actually worked for him. So it was really an awesome thing when he turned 80 to take him through the Negro League, and he just cried because he got to see all those guys. It was so awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, Connie Johnson was an incredible pitcher for the Kansas City Monarchs and later the Baltimore Orioles and Chicago White Sox, and very good friends with Bob Motley and Satchel Paige.
Yeah, I knew him well.
Fine gentleman. And the hits just keep on coming.
I just had a question.
Talk out.
I'm feeling okay. Why do you think there isn't women baseball leagues like there was back during World War II and all that kind of stuff? Why isn't there some now? Professional women's baseball team.
Well, there are some professional women softball teams, but not hardball. And we had a panel earlier today about women's baseball, and we do find professional women's baseball team overseas. for whatever reason, they have not made that transition to the United States.
You spoke a little bit about MLB's influence on the basketball, and I was saying when I read in the Globetrotters book that Goose Tatum and the Indianapolis Clowns, I think Bob Gibson and some of those people used to barnstorm as basketball players, and the elite athletes that were in there. I was going to say, can you touch upon the showmanship that the Clowns put into the game as far as whipping it around and playing at night, those type of things that they did?
Well, y'all want to talk about a little bit about shadow ball?
Yeah.
I mean, these players were so talented, they would pass this ball around and the fans could not keep up with the ball. Flip it behind their back, over their head. And what we come to find out was the reason why we could not see the ball because the ball did not exist. That's how good they were. And that's what he was talking about earlier with Goose Tatum. He would fake a throw from the infielder, hit that glove, pat that right foot against the bag, and the umpire, listening for the sound of the ball hitting the mitt and watching the foot on the bag, thought the ball had arrived and called the runner out when that was not the case. The Negro Leagues were very talented in what they call tricky baseball, more up-tempo, and they kept the game more exciting. And this is why when the Monarchs would go play, say like the Homestead Grays in Washington, D.C., they would draw 40, 50,000 fans versus the Washington Senators, who could only draw 4,000 that same weekend. Fans, black and white, didn't care about the color of ball players' skin. They wanted to see the best entertainment for their dollar. And that was that black baseball, Negro League baseball.
When you umpired, how many umpires were on the field at a time?
When I umpire, it's always full umpire on the field. We had two traveling umpires. I'm one of the travel umpires. Then we pick up local umpire in every city. But two of us travel. Maybe I get on the Indianapolis Clown bus or the Birmingham Black Baron bus. And when we get to the city, we play in Birmingham. They always have local umpire. We pick those up, and they will umpire the bases, like second and third base. But we travel umpire, we umpire home plate and first base. We control the umpire situation.
Bob, tell them how much money you made umpiring.
I made $300 a month. Out of the $300, I had a family back in Kansas City. I had to support my family. I had to pay for everything, my room, food, board, and everything out of $300. And I asked the commissioner about a raise. He told me to go out and get a real job.
And Bob Motley's family is here with him today. Pearl.
That's my wife who's in the wheelchair over to your left. My son is over there, Byron.
Right.
And our friend, Jeff.
Yeah, so that's the Motley crew.
Yeah.
And, of course, Robert Paige's family is mostly from Kansas City. He drove all the way in from St. Louis just to be with you here today. So take advantage of that.
Thanks for coming.
No. Thank you for attending.
Yet.
Thank you.
We got time for a few more questions.
I've got a question. Did you ever get a chance to umpire in the major league?
No, to answer your question. Let me tell you. To umpire in the major league, you have to go to an umpire school. They had two schools. Both of them was in the state of Florida. The state of Florida had a law back in those days that white couldn't teach black and black couldn't teach white. For 10 years, I applied every year to go to the umpire school. On my 10th year, I was accepted to go to the umpire school. When I got to the umpire school, there was 87 students in the class, including me. I was the top of the class, but I couldn't get a job in the major league. Can you hear me? On my second year, I came out to honor, couldn't find a president would take a black umpire in the league. Oh, did it go out? Yeah. I'm sorry. That's part of my life. I don't feel bad.
Well, Bob, what kind of score did you score on the written test?
We had 87 students in the class. We had 160 questions to answer, and I didn't miss a one. But they couldn't take a black umpire in the league. On my second year, I went back and took the advanced course, and I came out again, top of the class. But they couldn't find a president would take a black umpire in any league. And that from Class D all the way to the Major League. I had an opportunity to umpire in the Major League when they went on a strike. And I asked them, would I have a job after strike is over, but they couldn't guarantee me that I would have a job. So I refused to cross the picket line. That's the only time I was offered a job in the Major League. And I do not regret it because I wasn't going to cross no picket line unless they guarantee me I'm going to get a job.
All right.
So ask me any kind of question about baseball. I love the game. I'm a season ticket holder with the Kansas City Royals. Been there for 40 years. And always will be until I die because I love baseball.
Now, Bob Motley has a book out. Hopefully we can find someone to sell it. And
the book is right over there by my son. If you like to buy it, it's
bring it up here.
It's only cost $24.95. You can tell the history of Bob Motley.
Thank you. Dr. Donald Spivey out of Miami University has just put a book out on Satchel Paige called If You Were Only White. The book was just released last month.
That's correct.
Definitely the most incredible book about the legendary Satchel Paige.
You ought to write a book.
So we must have that book. It has a lot of family history that has gone unreported and the approval, endorsement of the Satchel Paige family.
It is a phenomenal read, and it was a 12-year accomplishment. And I mean, Dr. Spivey went to the fullest extent, from having to go to all the Latin American countries, having to hire interpreters to pull all the archive of the featured writers of those days to construct all of his history. And it was for Dr. Spivey, it was a labor of love because he is, to me, he's just that thorough. But it's an honor, of course, and it is a fantastic read. So if you get a chance and you see it, believe me, you'll learn more in that one novel about the history, of course, of my father and the Negro Leagues than I would say the combination of several other authors.
Somebody asked me, did I umpire in the Major League? I did umpire in the Pacific Coast League. That's next to the Major League.
And you can look at the cover of this book, and you can look at the cover of this book, and you can see the jumping Bob Motley.
I might jump over your head to call somebody out. I'll save. It used to get into my bone, and I just take it out.
That's why they call it the soul of the game.
Go
ahead, Bob.
Just to reflect about growing up, Robert Paige, and they ask about what the home life was like. Well, if you can imagine, in the city, which in a lot of cases we found out later because the city officials would come through, but we had just about every conceivable pet that you can think of, from ducks to raccoons to chickens, the dogs, cats, you name it. And it was, of course, my job to go out and water, feed, groom, clean. So that's why I don't own a pet today.
All right, I think we're out of time, and we should show our appreciation for the last living umpire, Bob Motley. and the son of the great legendary Satchel Paige, Robert Paige. Please give it up for these two gentlemen.